Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Getting Hammered. I am your host, Mary Catherine Ham. I'm here with my co-host, Vic Mattis of the Washington Free Beacon. There's so much news today. We really had trouble figuring it out, what we're going to talk about. So we got a big old list for you guys, including some bad news for several members of the squad. Not great news stories about them. We've got an update on the last great hope of the Democratic Party, Stacey Abrams, out of Georgia, and an update on Disney versus DeSantis, carjackings galore in D.C., and some food news, which you know you need from us. Before we get to that, how you doing, Vic?
Hello, Mary Catherine. Doing fine. As you're listening to this right now, dear listeners and hammerheads, I will actually be a year older.
Oh!
So tomorrow is the big day, which is today, I should say. You're listening to it, yes. So it's today. Not a lot of fanfare compared with the last birthday. You remember that one? That was a big one. This is interestingly low-key and surprise-like. Kate said she was just going to take me out to dinner with no other details, just to be home at 5. She's taking me out.
Okay.
And I don't. The only other thing is that I know is she says we're going to Uber. So I said, I guess we're going to be Ubering to my in-laws. That's great. Looking forward to that dinner. No, I'm kidding. I would love to have dinner with them. I guess I don't know what's going on with the Seth Rich case. I got to find out what happened to him.
It's a lot. There's a lot of stuff you got to catch up on.
This is all sorts of jokes. No, honestly, I'll be happy when we Uber to the Cheesecake Factory. Yeah. And I'll get my factory meatloaf.
Yeah, you got to get toasted at the Cheesecake
Factory.
Well,
what I'll plan to do,
several chocolate martinis.
Let's assume it's the Cheesecake Factory. Mm-hmm. I'm just not going to eat all day so I can have my 2,000-calorie meal.
Yeah, do that.
In one shot.
We love it.
I'm sure. What's the worst that could happen? Mary Catherine, how are you? I was worried we might not see you ever because of this ridiculous traffic today.
Oh, yeah. No, the protesters are blocking the roads in D.C., and it turns out that as a society, we just let people do that. Yeah. I guess as long
around you.
As long as you do it for the right reasons. If you were doing it to protest like COVID restrictions, that goes badly, and you have your
SWAT.
You have your
in this truck right now,
or like have your bank account seized, like in Canada. Yeah. But if you're doing it for the right reasons, for Palestine, or climate, you just get to hang out there.
Do you think this makes all the commuters like more inclined to join their cause because it's like,
I would doubt it. By the way, can I just say start arresting these people. Arrest them quickly as soon as they block a major roadway. Mm-hmm. That is not First Amendment rights. Just get them out of there. Because when you don't, you lead to more and more of this.
Yeah, there could also, and when it gets to a certain point, then your average citizen may take things into their own hands.
But here's a way to do it for the DOJ or any of these liberal cities. Imagine they're pro-life protesters.
Put that in your mind.
Sitting outside a clinic praying, and then that will give you the correct mindset to arrest them under
like they did in Tennessee,
like they've done in Tennessee.
Yeah, they'll put you away.
So just think about it that way, and maybe we could get that taken care of. But as you'll hear later in the show, the cities are not great at sort of clawing back their bad decisions.
I'm sorry, I threw you for a loop. How are you?
No, I'm good. It's fine. I can riff with the best of them.
You are good. Yeah.
What's going on here is I did want to tell you guys while I was out of town last weekend that Steve was in peak Steve form. Okay.
Physically?
He is, always.
Can't get more than that.
Always. Yeah. But peak Steve parenting.
Oh.
So I'm out of town, and he's got 4 kids. Mm-hmm. We do not worry about this at all. Get yourself a husband that you don't need to worry about that at all. It's a good thing to have. Okay? So I do my thing.
Didn't say this. My wife's listening. She says, that's a good idea.
Any rate. I get, dispatches from home occasionally. Yeah. And on one day, here's what I get. The oldest child, 10, I get a picture of her carrying a bag of rice. She has been asked to do reps up and down the staircase with a bag of rice to train her to safely carry her little brother.
Oh, right, because the weight. And it's like when you carry a baby. Yeah. I used to say this about my daughter. It's like a bag of rice.
Yeah.
So
she's training. We're working on that. Then I get a picture of the 2 babies in, those newfangled swings. I think they're for kids with various physical disabilities.
Sure,
They're kind of large.
Oh,
and,
yeah, I know that.
And you just plop the kid in them.
Yeah.
I don't even know if they had the like safety harness fastened. It didn't look like it necessarily. Both babies in those sitting next to each other. But the catch is they're over this giant puddle because it rained like forever. So it's raining outside.
The puddle's always below the swing for some reason.
No, he's taken them. He's taken them to the park in the rain. They're in the two big swings, and they're over this giant puddle, and they're dressed in new snowsuits that he got them, that are both camo.
No. Oh, okay.
So it looks like Bud's training for toddlers. This is what's going on. And then the last kid, who's the second child, while the babies are doing Bud's training, she's doing elaborate obstacle courses in the rain, American Ninja Warrior style, as directed by her father. And he said he gave her one. I got a couple of pictures. He gave her one that was pretty hard, and she was frustrated that she couldn't do it. And so I get a picture of her kind of moping in the rain, sitting, thinking about like, I can't do this challenge. And he leaves her because this is what we do. She needs to figure it out. And sometimes the best parenting is no parenting.
Yes.
And you know what she did? She figured it out. Victorious. Anyway.
Does he have them like, crawling on their,
I mean, he certainly could, but we don't want to train the toddler too much because that child is diabolical.
Yeah.
This morning, we finally childproof something. We don't really childproof much except for the stairways.
Sure.
But we don't do the rest of the stuff.
Corners and such.
However, the toddler has decided she likes the under the sink cabinet. And the under the sink cabinet, has a bunch of stuff in it that you don't want the kids into, including like dishwasher pods that seem nice for chewing, right?
Yeah.
And
they smell nice.
Yeah. And so we finally got a lock for that.
Yeah.
And this morning I was just, serving up some breakfast to the baby, and I looked over and the toddler's just calmly dismantling the lock that we put on the the cabinet. So that one, you got to watch out for her. She's crafty. She's strong. We'll see what happens to us. It remains to be seen. Okay. So don't overtrain the toddler, Steve. Anyway, he handled everything beautifully as expected, and the children gained skills and resilience while I was gone.
A well-deserved bubble bath for your husband.
He does enjoy a soak. Okay. I actually came back from my trip with some salts for him.
There you go.
Some soaking salts of various scents.
Don't ingest them.
No. They're not that kind of bath salts.
Remember those salts? Yeah.
Come on. We don't do that in our house. All right. Should we talk about the squad?
Let's do it.
The squad's having quite a week. Let's start with Cori Bush.
All right.
The Justice Department is investigating Democratic Representative Cori Bush over the potential misuse of funds for her personal security services, the Missouri Democrat confirmed Tuesday. In a lengthy statement issued after news of the federal probe emerged, Bush said she and her team are fully cooperating in this investigation. The upshot is she spent a bunch of money on security, which is annoying because she was a person who
extremely
is very vocal about not having police forces funded in ways that might protect others who don't have money for personal security. And this money came out of the wrong sources and went to people with conflicts of interest who she shouldn't be employing. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised they're even doing an investigation.
Well, I mean, the thing that's really
because my standards or my expectations for DOJ at this point are sort of low.
I mean, we're just being constantly let down. So it was quite a surprise when it was announced that the Department of Justice was investigating this. If you remember, Cori Bush was pushing for defunding police, saying that we just have to do it, while also saying, quote, suck it up, in terms of her having her own personal security detail. Which, we pay her, our taxes go to pay for these members of Congress. She was also paying her now husband, Courtney Merritt's, something like $74,000, which for a security service, which I don't even think Mr. Merritt's had a prior much experience in security detail, but now he was her security.
Right.
And the FEC alleges that
Steve's
this
listening
was,
like, how do I get in on that? Because he could provide
So,
security.
as a spouse and security. And the FEC claims that she had used $74,000 in campaign donations for the security. In addition to that, she also employed another fellow named Nathaniel Davis, paid him $152,000, and this guy claims to have powers to control the weather.
Oh.
Yeah. And he's like 1,000,000 years old or 1,000 years old.
In that case, probably a good investment for security if you can really control the weather. Like, that's drop that tornado on whoever you need to.
I think
that's
the key,
what I
you look
say.
outside and then you tell them, I wanted it to be this way. So that's what's going on with her.
All right, so that's Cori Bush.
Wait, it's not like, I don't know, she or any other members of the squad that we're about to go into here seem very much embarrassed or chastened. They just keep on going.
No. Tell me what is going on with Jamal Bowman. He's been in the news this week as well, and not just for the fire drill that he caused.
Yes, people forget about that one.
There was really no punishment for that, correct?
Yeah.
Okay,
that's right.
Cool. Yeah.
He got it.
I'm sure I'd get off scot-free.
He got censured. For that. But nevertheless, he is undeterred. Jamal Bowman, the congressman from New York. Several things have been going on. The first one is he has been at various talks and rallies and such with people who he claims to be in awe of, and that he's almost like, I think he said he was starstruck.
I'm sure they must be quality people then.
Yes, they were people who hate Israel. And so they're basically anti-Semites. And then he said, well, actually, I didn't know much about what they said, even though I was starstruck because he had earlier claimed that, he had followed them all this time and it had inspired him and given them all this insight. So that's the one thing. The second thing is the Daily Beast seems to have uncovered his blog.
Yeah, using that Wayback Machine. You got to watch out for the. But I should correct myself. He did plead guilty to a misdemeanor in the fire drill incident.
That's right. And this is his blog from around 2011. Not that long ago. He was an adult, where he writes poetry in which he was able to, through poetry, express his suspicions about 9/11 being an inside job.
Oh, okay.
In order to get the United States into Afghanistan, because you know how much we want to go into Afghanistan.
Obviously.
Especially before 9/11. It has so much to offer.
I think it was Taylor Swift's idea.
Yes, probably, based on the colors of the logo.
She's the psyop.
That's right.
Okay.
So that's what's going on with him.
This is a little excerpt. 2001, planes used as missiles. Target, the Twin Towers. Later in the day, Building 7 also collapsed. Multiple explosions.
There was a there, yeah.
Multiple explosions heard before and during the collapse. So, I also like that when this was broken, you think it's going to be like, a lot of times when this stuff happens, it's like in his former job as a, whatever, like shock jock lefty radio host or something like that. It was in his former job as a middle school teacher.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Great.
So glad that this was.
He was later on a principal. This is, so he was really, again, something that the kids can look up to.
Well done, Jamal.
He's not doing himself any favors with the Jewish vote, shall we say, in light of these and other incidents. And he is being challenged by George Latimer, who is the Westchester County executive for a Democratic primary. So that's going to be interesting for us to watch.
Yeah.
And see how he does.
I mean, the whole branding for that campaign should just be like, pull the fire alarm. Let's get out of this disaster.
It writes itself. I was just thinking that if I was running against
in case of emergency, call me.
Right. I mean, no. I mean, you look at you just all these different incidences. As long as you have the means to publicize them to your voters, my slogan would just be vote for me because I'm not crazy.
I mean, that's contingent on being able to act not crazy, which almost no one in politics can do.
No.
Speaking of which, two squad members, Bush and Rashida Tlaib, because we're gonna get apparently all of them this week, were the only two representatives who voted against a bill barring Hamas terrorists from entering the United States. So good job, guys, on that one.
It's more nuanced than that, Mary Catherine.
I guess I haven't heard the nuance. And finally, Ilhan Omar in some hot water. Over a viral clip, I think we can play a little bit of.
reer Minnesota iyo Soomaalida meel kasta ku nool adeerkaya hadda mar dhow ka hadlaayay idinkaga hambalyeynaya sida aad iskugu wada duuban tihiin sida aad kulligiin u garab istaagteen madaxweynaheena because wuu u baahan yahay in kulligeen aan garab istaagno Soomaaliya waa Soomaali Soomaaliya waa hal walaalaan wada nahay dhulkeena lagama kala qaybsanaayo dhulal baa naga maqan aan raadsanaynaa insha Allah maalinta laakiin inta aan haysan hadda lama kala qaybinaayo marka waa mahadsantihiin dhammaan
that has her professing perhaps her interest in protecting Somalia more than protecting the U.S. Is that a fair characterization of what people are upset about?
Well, she is, as you know, Somali first and Muslim second. So I'm not sure where American citizen and member of
like
Congress
third or
comes.
fourth.
I think that's third or fourth. Look, if she wants to say how much she loves Somalia, I get that.
Right.
And people feel this way. But if you were to switch out the word Somalia with Israel, how would she feel about that? That's the question.
I'm betting not great.
Yeah,
actually, I do have AOC is making an appearance this week as well in this update because she's getting flack from the left because she didn't say that she believed that Israel's bombardment of Gaza is genocide. So they're mad at her for that. She, on NBC's Meet the Press, she did not straight up just call it a genocidal nation, one of our closest allies that is definitely not engaged in genocide. So they're mad at her for that.
Yeah,
the Hamas contingent is upset at her about that.
It's funny because, again, in some ways it's just never enough. She actually, came out against the defunding the Biden administration, pausing funding UNRWA, just because you have a few bad apples that might have killed some Israelis,
Oh, those were some bad apples. All right. That's the squad. Wow, they've had quite a week.
They're on a roll, but again, they don't seem to be
quite a week.
Embarrassed or chastened.
I want to do a segment that is a little bit of just like a media narrative update. Because I feel like we get a narrative about stories for months and months and months, sometimes years and years and years, and then it turns out that it's like maybe not true, but by the time we find that out, it's much later. So first of all, let's do a quick little Stacey Abrams update. Stacey Abrams, if you guys remember, was the most promising Democratic politician. She was going to turn Georgia blue. It turns out she hasn't. So she had this nonprofit that was supposed to create all these new voters. The name of that organization was Fair Fight. It has been accused of all sorts of corruption and misconduct with funds. It is now winding down. Fair Fight is laying off staff. Eric Erickson notes that in 2022, Stacey Abrams penned a prominent op-ed in the New York Times on how to turn a red state blue. It was a hubristic act by a hubristic politician who later turned up in Star Trek as President of Earth. Remember, she was the hotness. All the photo shoots, all the glamour shots, all the magazine covers, because she was the future.
Right.
It turns out, no. What's there to show for it all? $25 million in legal fees, $10 million in her campaign chair's law firm, and $2.5 million in debt. Fair Fight still owes back pay to 20-plus young activists who believed in Abrams's cause. Look at that grift.
I would say, just for clarification purposes, it was Star Trek Discovery. And she was president
nerd
of
clarification.
She was president of United Earth.
United,
because all united under her. This was her dream come true.
Naturally,
because she loves
that
Star
may be
Trek.
the highest office she gets. Because I'm not sure it's happening after this.
No, they wanted so badly for her to be the next big thing.
I mean, Kemp's just better.
Yeah,
this is the great.
She wasn't running against Trump.
Right. The great irony of the Republican Party right now is that national overarching politics level, certainly presidential, head of the party, the RNC, disaster, dumpster fire, like not raising money. What money they're raising, they're spending on legal problems for Trump.
A lot.
Trump is like, who knows what he's doing at the head of this campaign, at the head of this party, if indeed he ends up being the nominee, which he probably will. But then you have these pockets of like incredibly competent governance.
Yeah.
Competent governance. Florida.
They're just doing their thing.
Georgia.
They're ignoring all these other distractions.
I'm glad we have them.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Kemp beat her over and over again, and it turns out she wasn't good at doing the thing that she was supposed to be good at doing. Okay, let's move on to Ron DeSantis. we have an update on him. Remember, Disney was just going to wipe the floor with him?
Oh, yeah.
Now, when
Which
the whole
I
Disney
would've-
thing started, I was like meh on this because I do think you don't want to, even though I think the perks for them are not necessarily guaranteed or a constitutional right that they should keep forever and ever and amen, because they're just a corporation that's doing business with a government. And sometimes that means you don't get those perks anymore. And taxpayers maybe shouldn't be funding them.
Right.
However, do you do it based on viewpoint of the company? That was the part I had an issue with. But then the narrative was, oh, he's done it now. He's taken on the mouse. Here's the latest. A judge on Wednesday dismissed a federal lawsuit Disney filed against Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and other defendants that alleged they retaliated against the company for publicly criticizing a controversial parental rights education law backed by the governor. Judge Alan Windsor ruled that Disney lacked legal standing to sue DeSantis and the Secretary of Florida's Commerce Department on a claim of violating its First Amendment rights. So that's a pretty clear win for the DeSantis side of that argument.
Vindicated yet again because he was focused on policy. It's interesting because when this first happened, I thought, oh, this is a bad idea going against Disney. Everyone loves Disney until everybody stopped loving Disney. Now, some people love Disney. Other people less so.
People don't love Disney as much anymore.
No.
Partly because they're just not making as good movies as they used to.
That's because they're obsessed with checking off certain boxes as opposed to just telling a good story.
It's not great.
And that obviously defeats a good story. Then DeSantis, of course, pushed for the Parental Rights and Education Act, which then they spun as Don't Say Gay, and had a field day in the news. The media, everybody jumped on this, and DeSantis is a joke. How can you do this thing? You can't mention the name. Until you actually ask actual Floridians, do you really want your 5-year-old to learn about all these various LGBTQIA2S+ issues before they even know how babies are made?
Yeah.
And the answer is probably not. Maybe I'd rather be the one, telling my kids about this or that. When, of course, the other attitude is, no, we know better and we're going to do it as early as possible. And DeSantis says, stop. And there's a reason why you have all these people moving into Florida because of this.
Yeah.
They don't want this other nonsense. And so.
No, haven't you heard, though, the California model is the model.
Well, take away your kid. If you're not for the, getting your child onto puberty blockers,
there's a story about a couple this week, I believe in Montana, that actually lost custody over the refusal to affirm gender identity.
Yeah.
That one is
happening. It's not an exaggeration. Early on, people said, we're making this up. We're exaggerating. There's the mother who is suing California also because her child, it was kept a secret from her until that child was already on various medications.
It turns out parents don't love that.
No.
Yeah.
But don't they know that the government knows better than they do?
I mean this is the thing. Vic, that should be the theme of this podcast. Don't you know the government knows better than you?
They know better than you. Just give it whatever they decide to do right now.
They're so wise. Before we get into, we're going to do an upbeat media story.
Oh, okay.
And then some media stories. I just want to note that the AP did very good reporting. The
Associated Press.
On this attempt to take Trump down on his real estate assessments.
Oh, right.
So the Associated Press analyzed all the civil cases brought under this statute or rule or regulation, whichever it is. Right. Yeah, it's under a law. They went back 70 years, and they found that under this law, such a penalty has only been imposed a dozen previous times, and Trump's case stands apart in a significant way. It's the only big business found that was threatened with a shutdown without a showing of obvious victims and major losses. He didn't defraud anyone. And actually, there's a great clip of who's a Shark Tank guy, Kevin O'Leary, explaining this quite succinctly about what happened in this case.
Yeah, it's perfect.
So if you're a developer and you've got a building on a block anywhere in America and it's worth, let's say, $500 million, and you want to build a building right beside it, you go to the bank and say, this building is worth $500 million. I'd like to borrow a construction finance loan against this asset. and I want you to tell me it's worth 500 million too. And the bank negotiates with you and says, well, no, we think it's worth 400 million. And you fight it out. You're always trying to show your assets in the brightest light with the sunshine you can possibly determine for them. You want them to be worth the very most, because you're only going to get a 40 or 50% loan to value, as it's called. Then you borrow that money. In the case of a $500 million asset, maybe you get $250 million, and you build a new building with a construction finance loan. And so that's what this case is all about. And by the way, forget about Trump. Every single real estate developer everywhere on earth does this. They always talk about their asset being worth a lot, and the bank says no. And that's just the way it is.
But thank you to the Associated Press for doing this report. AP's review of nearly 150 reported cases since New York's repeated fraud statute was passed in 1956 showed that nearly every previous time a company was taken away, victims and losses were key factors. Customers had lost money or bought defective products or never received services ordered, leaving them cheated and angry. This is the problem with some of the lawfare, because that's what it is, against Trump, is that you end up using these tools that should not be used in this way. You overreach, you go after him for something nonsense, which, by the way, makes every time you go after him for something real look like nonsense. Right. And then in the future, guess who this overreach can be used against? Other people who didn't defraud anyone. It's not good for the democracy.
No. But again, as you said, it's lawfare. It's let's throw up as whatever, at the wall and see what sticks. And so far, nothing is quite sticking. But that's not going to stop them from doing more like this. I mean, you think about the Stormy Daniels hush money lawsuit, right? The statute of limitations had already passed, and somehow they were able to make the exception for this. I forget how they were able to do that. Did they suddenly at the last minute extend it? But I mean, it was not considered until, just now a felony. It was a misdemeanor. So
we're gonna posthumously elevate it to a felony.
So and in this case with the real estate assessments for Trump, everybody is trying to always sell your property or value your property, have it estimated at the highest amount as possible. You don't, the county will send you, an assessment of how much your property is worth. And I look and I'm like, there's no way it's worth that little. It's going to be worth more. People bid on it. And the bottom line is, as you mentioned, it's not like some bank was defrauded in this process. He paid back. You take out a large loan, you pay back the loan. This is what he does for a living.
I do feel like there should be an offense and a victim.
No, there's no victim.
Here.
But what they're hoping is somehow some judge or some jury, because they hate Trump, they all hate Trump anyway, they'll find him quote unquote guilty, and the resulting penalty is he can no longer do business in New York, and all of that has to be surrendered over. Just hundreds of millions of dollars. That's what they want.
No.
But if you're going, you might as well just go and arrest him and put him in jail if that's what you really, because that's the objective here, is to just prevent him at all costs. But if it's not, Mar-a-Lago is valued at $18 million.
Yeah.
Okay. That's like a Greenwich condo. So come on, man.
I believe it is more than that. Okay. So I would suggest perhaps as we go into this next story, more work like that might make media companies more valuable and in demand for paying customers, which is something that they need. Something that they need increasingly, as just in the last couple of weeks, the Washington Post, Los Angeles Times, Time Magazine, Condé Nast, which is the parent company of a bunch of magazines, Sports Illustrated, Business Insider, New York Daily News, National Geographic, and the Baltimore Sun, and also The Messenger, have all been in the news in just this month for layoffs, cost-cutting, labor walkouts, and bleak forecasts for the future. This is interesting partly because some of these were acquired by billionaires who are operating them at a loss. They do that on purpose. Bezos, leading the Washington Post, is like, look,
$100 million.
I know I'm probably not making money off of this right now. The LA Times, I believe there's a billionaire involved in that one too.
Yes, whose daughter is this crazy lefty.
Right.
And running it and trying to get involved in the editorial side. Coverage.
And so people are kind of mad that those guys aren't just like extending the bill forever and ever and amen and just paying for everything. Look, the market has changed. I don't love people losing their jobs, not like dancing on anyone's grave, but the market has changed and people aren't producing a product that others want to consume.
No, that's
like
the thing.
that's
Yeah.
You got to start thinking about that part
Yeah.
of it. And I think, look, of course, it confirms my priors to think that it's because they're biased, but I do think part of it is like, hey, I'd like to have news, maybe
Right.
not your weird feature on whatever cultural appropriation you've spotted at the food truck rally this weekend. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
That's what they're covering.
There's a couple ways to go about this, right? One is to make yourself sort of indispensable for a reader so that you have to be a place where they think, I need to pay to get this publication to subscribe because it's going to be information I can't get anywhere else, right? And
Right.
that's the Wall Street Journal model, and that worked for them. That paywall early on worked. They weren't giving anything.
Well, and I would argue
a lot of things
it's still
for
working
free. And it's
the
still,
news
it's
the news production at
wildly
Wall
successful.
Street Journal is still
Yeah.
working for them, partly because they're doing news production.
Right. And it comes with all the other great little sections
Right.
here and there. I mean, you not even little, they're big. So that's one way to get. It's also, by the way, that was the Cooks Illustrated model, right? And
Right.
Christopher Kimball, when he founded Cooks Illustrated, the cooking magazine, the whole thing was you can go on the internet to find your recipe for salmon or roast chicken, and why would you want to come here?
Right.
And the thing is, you can go there and you take your chances. It might work, it might not work with the measurements, different things. We, we have a test kitchen and we test these recipes to death until it is perfect. And we guarantee you the perfect roast chicken or whatever, because it's all based on what do you want us to cook? And readers will let them know. This is what, and it's mostly roast chicken, as it turned out. Some salmon, but mostly roast chicken.
A
lot of roast chicken in different ways. And
by the way, let me correct myself, because as soon as I said Wall Street Journal's not doing layoffs, I read a story that
they
in
are
fact, they are doing some layoffs.
Nice. Well, I mean, they go through, they shed
Yeah.
it from time to time. So, but then you're like, I need to subscribe to this magazine in print or online because I can get this thing. That's one thing. The other thing that's interesting, another way to go about having a business like this is if you just, I don't know, if all you did was publish opinions that make your readers feel good about themselves and their priors.
That's a way to do it.
That's a way to do it.
That's a way to do it.
But
it turns out maybe that doesn't pay as well as
Yeah. So
Well-
did you know much about the Messenger before it went down?
Not
Neither
really.
did I.
The thing I will object to it is that it initially, at least, it looked like the Messenger took down the archives, which for people who have done hard work
Yeah.
writing those
Yeah.
pieces,
Mhm.
I hope that is figured out, because you need those clips to go forward and hopefully get a new
I
job.
printed out all my clips at the Standard because now,
Because you weren't sure what
they
was
were
going to happen.
subsumed. Is that the word, subsumed?
Yes.
By Clarity Media's and Washington Examiner. And so if you go there now, any of the pieces that I've written, or David Brooks, or Tucker, or Charles Krauthammer, the logo is the Washington Examiner.
right.
There's like
It's
the mention of
different, right.
Weekly Standard is now like more and more gone
Yeah.
from the site. So as if we just never existed. I can say that because I didn't sign any.
Yeah. You can
I didn't
talk
sign
about it.
Yes, I can.
So yeah, there's all this going down. It's interesting also that this is happening in an election year, which is generally a good time for media. So this does not bode well.
The Messenger, by the way, supposedly blew through $50 million. I don't know how you do that with this. Oh, and they had about 300 workers. So, I mean, I guess it was a big operation, relatively speaking. Anyway.
I mean, again, I think we should have this clip from none other than Taylor Lorenz, where she bemoans this hollowing out of the media landscape.
The entire journalism industry is basically in a free fall. Today, the Los Angeles Times laid off 115 employees. They wiped out their entire DC bureau in an election year. They laid off pretty much all of their sports teams. They killed their entire tech and business section. They laid off breaking news writers, social media editors. The list goes on. But what's really dark is this is just the latest in months and months and months of layoffs in the media industry. In fact, tens of thousands of journalists have been laid off in the past year. Major media companies like BuzzFeed News have completely shuttered their news operations. Time magazine also just laid off a ton of people, and Sports Illustrated basically shut down last week.
She's still employed, by the way.
Yeah, look
Just
inward.
checking.
Look, I just think if the media landscape that millennial journalists came up in, and I'm the grandmaist, along with Taylor Lorenz probably, of those millennials, has disintegrated in this way, perhaps we should look to the shining stars of millennial journalism to tell us, well, what happened there?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
Maybe the product has not been giving people a thing they want.
Yeah.
And frankly, other people online are either able to do the news better or able to do the confirming the priors better.
Right.
And news organizations are stuck in this middle ground where they're not really doing either.
Yeah.
It's not great. It's not great, though. The fourth estate is important. And I think we do have a lot of options.
We have a need for reliable, good reporting.
Yes.
To just, without less.
That's why I wanted to note that AP story.
Good.
We gotta congratulate them when it happens.
Also, it turns out if you tweet out that you feel badly for the people laid off in journalism, you will get attacked. I don't know if you know this.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting thing because even if the person didn't work at this particular news organization, depending on where the news is coming from, a lot of times, like the Los Angeles Times, they upset a lot of people with their coverage of certain things like COVID.
Yes.
Those people are ready to come out and go after. So if you said, oh, all these people, I feel bad for it, they're going to come out and say, learn to code. That's been happening.
Well, and there is a feeling among normal people that a lot of the journalism model at major outlets has been to denigrate people like them, to pick and choose their ideological friends and boost them while crapping on everyone else. A lot of people feel like they were lied to great loss during COVID.
Some of it's deliberate and some of it's cluelessness.
Well, and then a lot of people also see there is a whole genre of journalism that is built to tear down normal people working normal jobs, doing normal things. Right. You find a couple tweets. You see an out-of-context clip of a high schooler being yelled at a pro-life protest or a rally, and he has a MAGA hat on, and you decide that Nicholas Sandmann needs to be a national figure who is shamed.
Of scorn, yes. Or the Kansas City Chiefs kid.
Yes. These things, if that's part of your business model, people aren't going to be super sympathetic if you lose your job doing that thing.
Oh, okay. So I have two thoughts on this. Well, one thought and then a question for you.
Okay.
Okay. So the first thought is the learn to code. I keep on thinking about Ron Livingston in Office Space. He learned to code and hated it, but then he got a more real job, which is working in construction. Of course, I have two brothers-in-law. One is a firefighter and the other one's in construction. So they do have real jobs per se. My question to you is, if and when this ends for us, the business ends for us, what would you do?
Oh, gosh. You know
if
what?
you had your choice of doing anything else.
Oh, that's a good question. The only...
This is like George Clooney's question and Up in the Air.
The only damn thing I'm good at is talking and writing. Those are the two things I'm good at. I'm an okay mom. Sufficient. I got nowhere to go.
You got nowhere to go?
Maybe I'd pull a Mrs. Maisel and leave my children and become a comedian.
No, you take your show on the road, Mary Catherine. People would come see you.
Steve, you're great with the kids. I got to go out every night at midnight to get on stage for an open mic.
You did win DC's Funniest.
I did indeed.
No, it's true.
Okay,
indeed. So here's my
I don't know. Maybe I'd attempt to be a motivational speaker.
Yes.
I have a story.
No, you can.
I have a story.
Again, you've done it. You can continue to do that aspect of it.
Or maybe I would just make some crafts and sell them on Etsy.
You do that too? You do that too, yes. You have a good social media
I feel like that would be soothing.
presence. I keep on thinking about jobs where there's always going to be a need, right? There will always be a need. Crime needs to be fought. Fires need to be put out. People always get sick, right? So I was thinking along those lines, podcast consultant. Thank you. Just
saving lives out here, Vic. We are saving
There's
lives
always a need for that.
Out here. Okay.
Just for you.
Okay, some more not great news out of the nation's capital.
Oof.
This is, again, it's sort of like the media trajectory, which is that I don't wish this on either the media climate or the city of D.C. or a lot of America's major cities. But man, have they often brought it on themselves consciously with these very bad policies and very bad ideas. So this one, there was a carjacking spree in D.C. A former Trump administration official and married dad of 3 is fighting for his life after he was shot Monday night by a gunman suspected of a string of carjackings in the greater D.C. area. Mike Gill, who served as chief operating officer at the Commodity Futures Trading Commission while Donald Trump was president, was critically injured in the shooting, remained in the hospital Tuesday night. He was on K Street waiting in his car to pick up his wife.
Yeah.
At 5:45 p.m.
Yeah. Basically, city center.
The middle of the city.
The city center, which is where like Fendi and Louis Vuitton and Tumi and the fancy restaurants, Momofuku, it's all there at 5:45 p.m. This is where this happens.
The same man, I believe, killed another man elsewhere in the city. The same perpetrator also shot Alberto Vasquez Jr., 35, and he died of his injuries, known to his family and friends as AJ. Everyone always remembers AJ. Everyone always remembers him no matter what the scene was. Vasquez's mother, Antoinette Walker, said, with the amount of carjackings and just instances of this magnitude, now it's touched our doorstep. It's not right. They had a memorial for him. The suspect in both of these crimes, identified Wednesday as 28-year-old Artel Cunningham of Suitland, was shot and killed Tuesday morning by 2 police officers in New Carrollton. By the way, part of his spree was also shooting at parked police cars on his drive throughout the city, and then he pulled a gun out, allegedly, when the policeman approached him. So this guy was out there.
It's out of control.
And the prayers for Gil, who I hope can recover from this. It sounds not... It's critical. It's critical.
Right.
But folks were out in force this week talking to the D.C. City Council saying, like, y'all got to get this under control because it's all over the city.
And they acknowledged it, yes? Tell me that the D.C. City Council officials were like, you're right, this is really bad, we're going to...
Well, actually, we have a clip.
Oh.
Yeah.
During the discussion, residents did not hold back, voicing their frustrations.
I blame the system.
Many questioning why kids aren't being held accountable.
We as a city and a community need to be much more focused on prevention and surrounding young people and their families with resources if we want to be safer in the long run. We cannot prosecute and arrest our way out of it.
Disagree, at least in part, guys.
I'm not a criminal justice expert.
Right.
Far from. But I kind of feel like if you were to make an announcement and say that from this moment on, anybody who commits a carjacking is going to immediately go to jail, pending trial.
Yeah.
Right? And that the maximum penalty for a conviction of carjacking would be like 5 years.
Yeah.
Right? I kind of feel that would possibly deter people from committing more carjackings versus the current strategy, which is to have lessen the penalty.
Just let them go
and commit as we just heard in the audio, to more resources. There's more resources.
Right. Well, you gotta deal with the root problems.
Yeah.
Look, I do think there are root problems
Sure.
that you also have to deal with. But if you send a message that you are going to punish people for
We're
carjacking,
not doing this,
then fewer people will do the carjacking.
Right. So, for example, Fairfax County in Virginia, which is just nearby, their last year, the carjacking rate went down by 10%. Okay, and over the river in Washington, D.C., there were close to 1,000 carjackings that amounted to an 103% increase. There seems to be a correlation with the penalties.
Yes.
So much so, all I have to say is, and I saw this on NBC4's website, the subhead is the reason why they think there's an increase is, quote, a perceived lack of consequences.
Oh, perceived.
Yes, but the answer is yes. Yes, that's why.
They're perceiving correctly.
They're
perceiving correctly. And that's one of the reasons, by the way, that a lot of the carjacking suspects are teenagers. This one was not.
Yes.
But a lot of them are teenagers because, especially as minors, they're not going to suffer the same consequences as an of-age perpetrator would. And they often are just on their merry way,
Yep.
which is not great for the city.
That's right. the majority of the carjackings are both with young people and armed.
Ugh.
So it's
By the way, I
bad
had lunch
combination.
a block from that location this week.
It's a fancy area. The Residence is there. Del Frisco's is there. It's not
Ugh.
good.
Ugh. And then this poor family lost.
Yeah, that's worse.
I mean, just awful. There was also a young, I read last week, there was a young volunteer with at-risk youth who was murdered on the street in a robbery in D.C. And it's just like, what are we doing here?
I'm not sure what it's going to take for them to realize, because they're pretty much out of their minds. I mean, Muriel Bowser knows that these people are out of their minds, the D.C. City Council I'm talking about. So I don't know, at what point do they finally say we have to do something?
I mean, they keep
Except
re-electing Bowser and
right.
several of these other people.
And well, that's the thing. I mean, unless they knew that their own voters were like, hey, like they just had this meeting, we've had enough of this, you need to crack down. But they seem to push back. And I mean, you almost hope that, cynically, that it's some sort of political thing versus that they're that clueless and they actually
know
believe
which is
this
better.
is going to work. I know this is that's.
But
do you remember the push for DC statehood not long ago?
oh yeah. I mean, it's always sort of like an undercurrent.
Yeah.
The problem is that you get so far down these roads where people understand what the incentives are and understand that there will be no punishment, and you create sort of these mini industries of carjackings, of shoplifting, of looting, especially luxury items or more expensive items. And you sort of get in this doom spiral. Yeah. And many residents of DC not excited about it. Another place is rethinking some of its policies. And I'm interested in this because I'm generally a little more libertarian, particularly on marijuana. I think we spent so much money enforcing the drug war against something like marijuana that I don't think is necessarily as damaging as to be worth enforcing all of that to that tune. However, Oregon took the whole loaf on the drug legalization. The governor of Oregon has declared an emergency in the city of Portland a few years after the state became the first in the nation to largely decriminalize drug use. Oregon paved the way as the first state to decriminalize drug use, passing Measure 110 in 2020. Because everything was going so swimmingly in 2020, they were like, let's do a new experiment. Instead of incarcerating drug users, the measure focused on addiction and recovery, with Portland police officers handing out citations for public drug use. People can have a chance for treatment and have their fines waived if they contact specific rehabilitation services, but calling that hotline is voluntary. We've had 3 years of this law that has not delivered on the promise that voters thought they were getting, Washington County District Attorney Kevin Barton said. And in a lot of these cases, it ends up making a city like Portland much more dangerous to people who are trying to work, people who are trying to live, people who are trying to send their kids to school. So, they're the laboratories of democracy for a reason in the states. This experiment and the experiment happening in Washington not going the correct way. No.
It's interesting with marijuana legalization, which sort of, on the surface, for me at least, I thought, okay, well, lessen the penalties. How bad can that be? Right. Certainly from a libertarian point of view, as you mentioned. But the marijuana of today is much different in terms of the strength than it was.
I don't go near it,
day.
so I have not updated my knowledge of the cannabis. But
I'm just saying.
But so the people say.
My sciatica is mysteriously healed. You also don't know nowadays what it's being laced with, and you're hearing all these awful stories about these overdoses because they think they're taking one drug and in fact it's another. But we're not even talking about this in Oregon. We're talking about hard drugs. We're talking about fentanyl and heroin. Isn't that the
fentanyl is the thing that has become.
I just don't know what when they thought they were just going to hand out a citation and encourage you to go to rehab. What did they think was going to happen? Because these are pretty addictive substances.
Yes.
So it just reminded me of in Joan Didion's Slouching Towards Bethlehem, right? And it's like 1967 in San Francisco. And she visits, this family, and the parents are high. The 3-year-old's high, the 5-year-old's on acid. I mean, it's just, where are we heading here?
Some societal norms are good.
Yeah, no. So it's okay.
Yeah,
Not good.
It's
Not
bad
good.
news, and I would say also on the marijuana front, we sort of have to, as a society, we seem incapable of like kind of keeping the pendulum somewhere in the middle. Like we do these wild pendulum swings where it's like, let's spend billions of dollars on nonviolent users of marijuana.
Right.
Now we don't do as much imprisoning of those people as we used to, but like, we spend a lot of money on it. And then it's like, no, we're going all out in Oregon. Look, there are very good uses for marijuana for medical reasons, for pain relief, for relaxation. I think people can be quite functional while using it, but there are also problems for like developmental brains.
Yeah.
And how that
Youths.
how that affects
good.
people who are teenagers.
Not good.
Oh, it might be less bad than TikTok, but
Yeah.
said the old hippie lady. It's just a natural substance.
It is.
But look, I just think like, why can't we sort of, we never land in the middle. We never evaluate the mistakes and then like land in the middle. So that's what I would hope we would do.
I mean, a lot of marijuana use, can lead to things like brain fog. And the problem is, I forgot what I was going to say. Serious subject, folks. Come on. All right.
All right. You know what? Look, I want a turnaround to happen for DC. I would like a turnaround to happen for Portland. I don't see it on the horizon.
It's not the Joe Rogan show.
This second.
Okay.
Okay. Can we talk briefly about a Vox
article
that just got totally slammed?
Yeah. What happened here?
Okay. So says this is the Vox tweet of its piece. Americans are obsessed with protein. They eat about 2 times as much of it as the federal government advises, and 60% of U.S. adults are trying to get even more of it into their diets. Excessive protein consumption could be making us sick. It's also wrecking the planet. How much protein should you actually eat per day? Find out from Vox. No, thank you. Vox, in consultation with the federal government, is the worst place to get nutrition advice. Let me just.
If you want to look like Ezra Klein, go to Vox. He's been a vegetarian for a long time.
Oh my gosh! The idea
they got ratioed.
The idea that protein is the problem with the American diet. That ain't the problem, guys. No. And
there
also,
are,
I want to be jacked. I want to be swole.
You
can't stop me.
Shredded. Before you get to the complexities of this specific, argument about protein versus fiber and whatnot. How about tackle the larger issues like ultra-processed foods and how we eat a lot of it, because many of us are too busy to cook, So it's convenience. There's a convenience to that. And it's not good. And I know this. And I know this from people I know, who you eat a lot of it. There are very bad long-term consequences for this. And I can tell you, but I'm not going to name names. But it's just not a good idea.
Right.
Meanwhile, they're talking about dairy is bad. You can get almond milk instead of the cow milk because of the environment. And I think it's in the subhead. That's the dead giveaway, the subhead, right? Of that, which was, and it's wrecking the planet. Because that's
what they're
really
into.
what it's all about.
That's what they're concerned about.
That's really what it's all about. So do you consume a lot but versus for your ratio of proteins
I don't know what my
carbs.
totals are.
Yeah.
I don't track my macros.
Right.
But I would wager that I probably consume more, certainly, than Vox thinks I should. And Vox, in fact, got community noted, which is my favorite Twitter feature. Community noted to say that, like, hey, actually, consuming more protein per pound of your body weight is quite good for you. And, if you have different goals for how you want your body to work, you might need more protein.
I had no intention of actually going into this article when you sent over the tweet. I was just going to look at the tweet, and then I ended up reading out the whole article.
Nice.
And
that's because you put in the work.
I put in the work.
Vic.
I put in the work, and because
that's why you need all that protein.
They had a caveat there with a little link saying that, with the exceptions of the elderly, pregnant women, and extremely active individuals. They said, I think that's me.
What about like middle-aged ladies who want to stay jacked?
You're extremely active as well. The only thing I don't understand in the piece is the grams, because I don't understand grams.
Oh, I never
I'm
understand
terrible about measuring gram as a measurement. I'm very bad on measurements.
I have a little I bought at like a Crate and Barrel clearance sale or something one time. These little
ounces, I can do that.
Yeah, these little it's like they're decorative. You would hang them next to your sink if you were the kind
Yeah.
of person who would find a hook and actually hang them.
Yeah.
But I don't do it. I just keep them in my drawer with the measuring spoons that has all the conversions on
Yes.
it. And I know I have my phone with me all the time. I could just Google the conversions, but for some reason it's very nice to pick up the physical thing and look at it. I still also do not understand grams.
I just realized now that if it was in ounces, I would have been like, okay, I'm eating a lot or whatever. But because it's grams, it could be kilograms. I don't know. It's just like I lived in Europe for a year, and
Let's
it's like,
just eat as much as we want.
I think I weighed 47 kilograms, or was it 67? I have no idea. Stone, I don't know.
They just want us all to be
They do.
skinny
They
and
do.
eating plant
But
protein, and
again,
I'm not going to do it.
It's all about this. You're seeing this pop up more and more, which is plant-based diet, which is basically just eat. Can't you be more like India?
Have you
is
ever-
the whole thing, which
have you
I
ever-
like Indian food.
Have you ever done plant-based protein?
What is that?
On a regular,
no, like
so there's like pea
impossible.
there's like pea protein that
Oh, like
sometimes
peas.
you'll have in
Yes.
in supplements and what have you. Let me just say, it takes a minute for the body to adjust to that. The intestines are not happy with you when you do that. I have
Hard
tried once or
pass.
twice and be like, nope,
Hard
that
pass.
doesn't work
No,
for
I'm not doing
my.
that. No.
Nope.
No. And the whole there's a concern about in the piece about fiber. We're not getting enough fiber, right?
I think I'm
I
fine.
think I get enough fiber. You remember I had my
Both of us unanimously.
No, I had my procedure.
Yeah, you're fine.
Flying colors. Super seed loaf. That's the secret. Is eat the super seed loaf. I did want. There was one thing quickly.
Okay.
Before we go and eat our giant bowl of pastas.
Mm-hmm.
There was a line in the story, and I had to read the quote for you. Okay. The quote in the Vox story is quote. One study in the UK even found that some men who want to reduce their meat consumption are embarrassed to order vegetarian meals among male friends. And I have to tell you, that's me. I will embarrass you. That was me.
Yeah.
So that's okay.
Also, I say good. That means you're hanging on, guys. Hanging on to that
To
masculinity.
your maleness.
You either go full vegetarian and you own it because you have the confidence as a man to do that, or you get shamed and you go back to eating protein like you should. Animals, eat them up. Delicious.
That's how you
can
get
I,
your B12. You
Can
get
I
it from
note
the
one more
animals.
thing? And I hate to close on something slightly not safe for work here, but I just wanted to note that the person who did lose his job over performing sex acts and videoing them inside a Senate hearing room,
Aiden Masarovsky.
not punished under the law. It turns out you can just do that. That doesn't. It's funny because I heard that like parading in the Capitol was a crime.
Mm-hmm.
There's plenty of things that can be crimes as long as you're in the Capitol, which is as it should be. We want to keep that place spick and span.
You got to keep it spotless.
This one, not a crime.
No, but I think it was just a matter of, how long he was like. So they said because he had access to the room, right? He had a right because he was a Hill staffer, and how long he was in the room. But he was just in and out. I was gonna make some joke about open and shut. I was like, okay. Keep it clean on this show.
So clean.
That wraps up this episode of Getting Hammered. Remember, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube, and you can follow me on Twitter at Victorino Mattis.
I'm at MK Hammer on Twitter, at MK Hammer Time on Instagram. Thanks for getting hammered responsibly. This has been a Nebulous Media podcast.